Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Jaraczewski. Once upon a time, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban seemed to be President Trump's favorite European leader. But some say those days are now a thing of the past. Or are they? Following high-level talks with European leaders, reports emerged of Trump allegedly asking Orban about his EU membership veto for Ukraine. Can Trump's drive towards peace, despite the associated controversies, paradoxically help Ukraine jump the hurdle of Hungary's distaste for allowing Kiev into the bloc? And where does that leave Hungary's political scene? Joining us now is Jakub, Jaraczewski, research coordinator at Democracy Reporting International. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Thank you very much for having me. Welcome as well.
So before we discuss the question of Mr. Orban and Mr. Trump, there was actually also an exchange between the Orban administration and Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk, who expressed his reservations about Budapest being a potential venue for talks between the US, Ukraine and Russia, and citing obviously the cautionary tale of the Budapest memorandum. Now, the Hungarians don't seem to be very happy about these comments, are they?
So certainly the idea of having peace talks between Ukraine and Russia take place in Budapest, raising several concerns among those critical of Viktor Orban and his government. And especially given Hungary's warm relationship with Russia and its opposition to EU membership of Ukraine and towards deeper support for Ukraine from EU member states, this is raising concerns, especially among those countries who are strongly invested in supporting Ukraine in this war. So definitely this is also part of a larger and longer going clash between the Polish government of Donald Tusk and the Hungarian government of Viktor Orban. On the back of this, several other items such as the fugitive former Deputy Minister of Justice Marcin Romanowski granted asylum in Hungary and evading justice, but also other tensions between the two countries. So this is part of a bigger picture.
Of course, the bigger picture is also that the location of the talks also matters, doesn't it? Fundamentally, shouldn't it be a place that could basically give you a perception of neutrality? In some cases, various locations in the Middle East had been proposed as venues, and indeed talks were being held, for example, in Turkey, but also, I believe, in Saudi Arabia. So would you say that Budapest here is not the perfect location from this perspective, or is there anything else to it?
I would say it's not a perfect location, but there are several other factors which I think need to be considered here. One item is that Vladimir Putin is wanted. An arrest warrant has been issued by the International Criminal Court, and any country which is part of the ICC system, which has ratified the Rome Statute, is under an obligation to apprehend him. Now, Hungary is still formally a part of the system. However, Viktor Orban has initiated a process of pulling out the country out of International Criminal Court and has welcomed the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, also wanted by the ICC. So any country which were to host those talks would run into a tricky question of how to handle a wanted person on its ground. And hosting those talks would be particularly challenging for countries that support the ICC. Switzerland has earlier signaled its willingness to host the talks and to grant Vladimir Putin an immunity, which I believe would be very damaging to the International Criminal Court if a country which otherwise has been supporting the International Criminal Justice System has now decided to sidestep it. In the case of Hungary, this particular item would be less of a problem in a way, because Hungary is pulling out of ICC anyway. So it's hard to expect them to respect this arrest warrant. So that would be less of an issue. However, of course, there is the question of the impartiality and neutrality of the venue. I believe there could be better choices than Hungary for this particular meeting. One obvious candidate, I believe, would be Turkey, a country which has been on the one hand supporting Ukraine, but also very strongly trying to play up its willingness to be the neutral partner and to host potential negotiations, which had already done in the past. So I think that could be another choice. But as you said, there are a lot of things riding into this. And one item might be the question of perhaps Donald Trump on the suggestion from the European partners trying to get Hungary to drop its opposition to Ukraine's EU membership in exchange for making Budapest the host of a crucial peace negotiation process.
Do you think that this is what it is about, a trade-off, essentially, that if you want Budapest to actually host these crucial talks, you need to allow Ukraine into the EU? And a related question, why would Trump actually want Ukraine to join the European Union? After all, he is firmly opposed to Ukraine's NATO membership.
A membership in the European Union is also a critical security guarantee for Ukraine. Of course, the EU is not a military bloc, but it also has a mutual defense clause in the treaties, which oblige EU member states to come to aid of another EU country in case it's attacked from outside. And so this is part of a larger system of connections and alliances which would help entrench Ukraine in the Western European system and help it shield it from further aggression from Russia. And the EU membership has been actually at the heart of the Ukrainian story just as much as the NATO membership has been. Let's not forget that the Ukrainian crisis in 2014 began when the then president of Ukraine decided to abruptly pull out of an association agreement with the European Union. So making it easier for Ukraine to join the EU would be a critical milestone and would enable possibly for the country to be protected even stronger. So this is also a factor which is coming into play. And Viktor Orban, for now, holds the cards for potential further steps of Ukraine's integrations in the EU. One more thing which is also probably factoring into this is the fact that we are moving closer and closer to the next parliamentary election in Hungary, scheduled for April next year. Viktor Orban is facing a very difficult situation with the opposition party TISA, led by Peter Magyar, polling ahead of Orban's Fidesz. And he might be looking for big, very visible wins in foreign policy in order to show that he is a confident leader and that Hungarians should invest their support in him for the next term. So there is a lot of factors which might potentially give the EU some leverage here.
That's a very interesting question, though, because it actually touches upon the dynamics of internal politics in Hungary. Some could say maintaining support from Donald Trump would be crucial for Viktor Orban to win the elections. But does Trump actually hold the same degree of prestige in Hungary as he did before? Did it actually increase following his peace efforts? Did it change anyhow? Because some could say, on the other hand, look, perhaps Viktor Orban shouldn't be trying to basically, maintain the support of foreign leaders. He should just convince the voters as to the merit of his own political program, like, internal reforms, the question of, economy and all that. So how does it actually work in terms of what is best for Viktor Orban at this stage?
Viktor Orban has been consistently projecting an image of himself being a grand friend of Donald Trump and two politicians together being crucial components of a right-wing liberal global coalition which would push back against liberal democracy and against globalization. And I believe that in the current situation that the Hungary is facing with regards to economy and with regards to cost of living and healthcare and several other items, Viktor Orban's field for movement is increasingly getting narrower and narrower, and he might be seeking foreign policy wins which are easier because they do not involve internal reforms and massive changes to how the country is being run, but are at the same time very visible and very easy to sell publicly. So this might be an attempt to show that, well, while things in Hungary might be not going internally that well, the country is respected on the world stage. The prime minister is shaking hands with the most important people on the planet, and that might be the avenue that Viktor Orban might be trying to pursue here to try to show that Hungary is a key player in resolving a global hotspot. And, well, if you want the country to remain such a powerful player on the world stage, then supporting Prime Minister Orban would be the way to go about this.
Doesn't that give additional leverage to Washington, though? Let's assume that Washington wants some concessions from Hungary, for example, reducing the amount of Chinese investments in Hungary. And right now they see the approaching elections, so they can say, OK, if you want our help, you need to actually do the things that we require of you.
Absolutely. I think that one item which is clear is that Prime Minister Orban's power and reach has its limits. And ultimately, Hungary is a country of certain capabilities which are limited. And so in the way conducting politics, that manner, it exposes the country to foreign influence, both from countries such as Russia and China, but for example, also from the United States, which might be using the leverage, as you say. This is a game, ultimately, which is best played by big players who have some sort of leverage, or whose countries at least have some key capacities, key roles to play. And in this kind of equation, Hungary doesn't hold that many cards. So absolutely, this is exposing the country to a possible use of American leverage, especially given the amount of Chinese interest and investment in Hungary, which is one of the highest in the European Union. And the country has been consistently warming up to Chinese businesses and to Chinese political alliances for quite some time. And this is something that Washington might be very keen to try to get rid of, given the clearly confrontational direction Donald Trump is taking the US towards China.
What about opposition leader Peter Magyar? Has he made any statements concerning Donald Trump and his administration? If he wins, will they get along?
It is very difficult to say because Peter Magyar is in many ways an enigma. What we know is that he wants to get rid of Viktor Orban and Fidesz, and he sees the corruption and misuse of money, in particular EU funds, as the biggest problems in the country. But when it comes to foreign policy, Magyar has been rather muted in his expressions. We know that probably he would be more open to accommodating Ukraine within the European Union, but also at the same time he expressed on several occasions that Hungary would not, under his leadership, Hungary would not involve itself too strongly in military support. So I think it's all kind of a part of positioning Magyar as a candidate which would be attractive to the conservative part of the Hungarian voter base. Magyar has been consistently trying to avoid items in Hungarian politics that would push conservative rural voters out from him. He seems to be very keen to try to capture at least part of the Fidesz support and right-wing voters by not aggravating them over cultural issues or foreign policy issues, and instead pressing domestic items and pressing matters which relate to everyday cost of living and other issues that speak to a very broad sector of Hungarian society.
Jakub Jaraczewski was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your thoughts on the matter.
Thank you very much.
And I'm Jaraczewski. You're watching TVP World. Please stay with us for more latest news, updates and commentary.